Hey friends, we're gonna go and make a dovetail box with a sliding lid so you can hold all your treasures. Remember, the tails, you start by drawing the triangles in them, and the pins will go in that. So whatever you want, I don't care what you make them. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make my tails in this, the walnut, and my pins in the ash. So the first thing I'm gonna do is start with the walnut. I'm gonna mark how deep of a cut I need to go, and I'm just using a pencil on this because I'd like to erase them at the end. So now I know that's how deep I'm going to make my cuts. Next thing I'm gonna do is draw my triangles, and the triangles are like the pyramids. They point up. You don't want to make them in reverse. Make sure you're putting these triangles to where they point up. And the other thing is you don't want those to touch the bottom, because this is essentially staying in. This is getting erased. That is staying in. It's not getting cut. And the triangles are what is going to be removed. So I like to color in what I'm going to take out so I know not to cut anything like here that would make it not able to be put together correctly. Now, why a dovetail joint? A dovetail joint is an extremely strong joint that doesn't really need any fasteners. It doesn't need glue. A lot of times we'll use glue on it, but it doesn't have to. So then you would square across your triangles. You don't have to mark them on the other side because you're going to worry about this side when you do your cutting. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this in the vise and we're going to cut those triangles. Okay, so now I'm going to take my saw. I'm going to cut straight across. Then I'm going to angle my saw and cut down at these angles. Then come back and cut down at these angles. I'm not moving like this. I'm not mitering it. I'm doing a bevel cut here because I want it straight across. So now that I've cut the start on all of them, I'm going to angle my cut. Then I'm going to come back at the other bevel . Okay, now I have all the bevels cut. Now I like to either chisel this out, and I don't love to chisel that out. I usually do that at the later stage. I like to take my coping saw, take it halfway down the cut, and then start cutting. Oops. And then turn the coping saw to go towards the corner. Then I come back and remove it like that. Now I have my tails made. So I'll look at them. They look pretty good. If you need to chisel any pieces out in here, you can go ahead and do that. You can put it down here, clamp it to your table, use your bench stop, whatever you need to do, and chisel that out. I don't need to, it looks fine. So what I can now do is I could go and do the other side, or I could mark out my pins. So we're gonna go ahead and mark out the pins. So what I like to do is set this in the clamp where it is pretty low. Then I can just set this on top and I can mark out Now, if I can't get my pencil in there, another thing you can do is you can use a marking knife. Remember that from previous videos? I really like to use this little guy. You take him in there. Now I have some lines that I can see in order to put the pencil mark on them. Now, this thing's really critical. You're going to look down in here, and I like to go ahead and put some scribbles on the ends here, just so I can know what I see, and then I darken in the parts that don't have the little scribbles on them. I erase those scribbles. They're just really light scribbles. I didn't really draw hard, just make a little thing so I know what's going to be removed. I know these pieces now are going to be removed, the parts that don't have the scribbles on them, because those are the parts I didn't see, and it needs to go down like this. So now that's what we're sitting with. Now we need to know how deep these go. So we're gonna do the same thing. It's the thickness of our piece. And I can go that far down. I would recommend you get a square. I've been doing this for so long, I can use my fingers. I use my finger as a guide. And I'm going to go down this one. Okay. Now is the point where instead of going straight across with a bevel, now I need an angle. So all these are going to get angled and cut straight down this way. All right, now I need to cut the other side. All right, so now I can remove these pieces that are shaded in on this side. I can come in and cut, but I need to make sure that I maintain, after I get in here, I want to maintain that angle because I don't want to cut into this. I'll do the same thing over here, and then I'll cut these with the coping saw. Let's go ahead and cut that with the coping saw first. I'll start over here, same type of thing. I'm going to change. You know what? I messed up. I have a line to follow here, but nothing over here. So I'm gonna go ahead, stop, put my line there so I know how far to go. There we go. Now I know exactly how far down I need to go. There we go. We might have to clean up some of that with a chisel, but so far it's pretty decent. Okay, there we go. We have our pins cut. All these look pretty decent, so we're gonna try to fit it. One thing you need to watch for, make sure these don't flare out at the bottom. If these flare out, and if they angle down, they will act as a wedge, and when you go to put this piece on there, they will push out, they will push these pieces out, and they will split one of these pieces off. So you gotta watch these, make sure these are straight down, and then don't force it. So we have our pieces that we're going to see. Now, one thing I didn't do is show which side was which. So these actually fit down pretty decent. There's some gaps in here. I could have made those a little bit better. So I need more practice, but it's not gonna fall apart. It's not even glued together. Okay, and that's how you make a dovetail, folks. What I also forgot to do is I like to label these sides out, out, and then top, top, and then I know exactly how they go together. There is your dovetail. We'll go ahead and move on, and we'll turn these guys into a box. When we make our box project, we have a base that is essentially a top hat. It has a rim all around that's a rabbet joint, and then it has this part that's raised up that we left in. We took out these edges so that the sides could sit down on here. So we make a cut here, and we make a cut here, and then we remove this piece. When we get done with that, we are left with a corner that's not quite square. We have these channels in there possibly, or it might just be raised up. So a shoulder plane is ideal for this type of work, where we can take that corner and we can square up that shoulder. We have this edge here that needs to be planed so it has a square shoulder. Right now it does not have that. So I'm going to take my shoulder plane and slowly but surely we will get this to where we have a 90-degree angle at this corner, so my sides will sit down flat on it and I can glue them to the bottom and the sides for my box. So this is a shoulder plane. You can use this with one hand. You can use this with two, but you don't really need to because you're not taking a huge cut. It's not like a bench plane where you're trying to take a big cut. We have a narrow blade here, and we're just trying to square up a shoulder. So when we use this, one hand's optimal. You can put your thumbs on the side here, finger on the side, finger up front, and make that cut. And you're only taking a little bit off at a time. That I like to make a sliding lid for, where the lid comes over this front and it slides in grooves or dados in the lumber. So we have to cut those, and we're gonna cut them by hand. So the first thing we need to do is lay out our cut so we know exactly where it's going and exactly how deep it's going to go. So we're gonna tear this apart. Right now it's not glued. It's not glued down to the base at all. It's just held with the dovetails. So we want to make sure we can put it back together the way it's supposed to go. Make sure you mark what different pieces are. I mark the tops, then I mark the inside, I write on them, and then I have each individual corner labeled. I have this as A, B, C, and D, inside and tops, so I know how it fits back together, so I'm not messing around and trying to get it to go back together if I'm working with glue, and I don't make my dado on the outside where it should be on the inside. So after it's all labeled, I'm gonna set my base aside, I'm gonna set my front aside, and my rear. Sometimes I'll make a little dado just a little bit deep, so that way that sliding lid has some place to kind of land, but sometimes I don't. So we're gonna take the two sides right now. And right now these are the bottoms. This is the top. These are the bottoms, this is the inside. So now I need to lay out this dado. So I'm gonna take my square, put it on a hole number, and I like to go about 3/8 to a 1/2 inch down. And then I like to go about a 1/2 inch down from there. I like my groove to be about a 1/2 inch to 3/8. So we have two marks here. I'm gonna go ahead and make a mark down here at the end. We have 1/2 inch down, 1/2 inch wide. Now we need to do the same thing with the other side. 1/2 inch down, 1/2 inch wide, 1/2 inch down, and 1/2 inch wide. Now I also need to make sure I cut my front down to match that bottom so that lid can slide over the top. So now we have those things marked out. You can take a marking gauge and run your marking gauge along those lines and get a nice line. I've been doing this for so long, I use my fingers as a guide. I set my pencil, and then I do it again. Flip it around. So now what you can do is you can either cut all the way through, or with this maybe you don't want to cut that tail, so maybe you want a stopping point. Maybe you want to say, I will not cut past a certain point in here, and so it's a dado that stops. That's fine too. I like to keep my tails that I've worked so hard on and not have a piece of it missing. So I'm gonna do that and have a tail, or a dado rather, that stops. And I'm gonna do the same thing over here. The dado will stop and not go past that. So here's how we're gonna do that. I'm gonna face this in the vise. Then I'm gonna take my chisel and I'm gonna come to this very end, and I'm just gonna go in a little bit, not very far, because I don't want that to split at all. And I'm going to make the stopping point with my chisel first. Just a little bit. Then I'm gonna get my, oh, you know what we forgot? We forgot depth. So I wanna go about halfway through this. I don't wanna go very deep, because I don't want that being very weak here, but I wanna go about halfway through. And I'm gonna mark that so I know how deep I'm gonna go. Then I can put it back in here. Now, I'm gonna start cutting, and I'm gonna start at an angle and rotate down. And I'm gonna do that on both sides. Okay, so I have the grooves started, the lines I'm gonna cut started. Now, if I wanna go all the way through, it's a lot easier, because then I can just come on this side and I can go ahead and cut down and cut down. This way, I've made it a lot harder on myself, so we're gonna need to do a lot more chiseling. The next thing I wanna do here though, is I wanna make some lines so that way our groove will not go out of those. So I'm actually gonna use either a marking knife or my pocket knife, and I'm going to run my knife along those lines. So I'm cutting those wood fibers. So now I can go back to my saw if I want, or I can start using my chisel a little bit, and I don't want to put a whole lot of pressure on this wood or on this chisel, because I want a little bit out. So what I'm going to do is just go down a little bit at a time. Okay, folks, that's what I'm gonna keep on doing. I'm gonna continue that, doing it all the way along here and removing a little bit at a time. All right, friends, so like I said, it's a lot easier if you want to cut all the way through and get rid of that. You can do a lot of it with your back saw, but if you want to leave that little bit in, it's going to take some more work, a lot more work actually, with your chisel. So after I get it to this point, I have a square file that I like to come in here and file it with, and then with a sharp chisel, I like to come on the back side and just do some hand work and not use the mallet so much and just square up everything and get it to look a lot nicer after you did the hard work of getting it all out. So we have our box here. We've made it. It's 100% done. We're ready to glue it. When you glue it, you can go ahead and make your lid. We made these grooves in here so that way we can take a piece of wood, a lid, and slide it in there, and that will act as the lid. It'll keep the contents inside. So the way we are going to do that is we're going to take a piece of wood. Now, I generally don't like to start with something this thin because there's not much more you can go to make it fit in there. You can if you want, but I like to do it a little differently. So I like to get a thicker piece of lumber, typically about 3/4. You can go an inch if you want. I like the 3/4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it first to fit from this measurement to this measurement. And then I'm going to plane that down at an angle. So I'm going to put it in my vise. Then I'm going to plane down these edges. I'm going to plane those down at an angle, holding my plane at an angle so my sides have a slant. So that way they will fit into my grooves and they will slant up, and then this will be a thicker part. A quick tip when you're planing something, I don't go straight on. I'll go at an angle, and that way only part of the wood is contacting the blade, allowing it to be an easier start, and then more can contact that blade. So it seems to be a lot easier start than just going straight on and trying to take a whole bite at once. If you go at an angle, it seems to work a lot better. Give that a try, folks. I'm going to rotate this so that way I'm not going to hit these bench stops, and I can get my angle, get my sides down to where I want them. Okay, so I have a little bit more to go. My channel is a 1/2 inch wide, and so I need to make sure this is a little bit under a 1/2 inch. I might go 7/16, maybe 3/8, probably more like 7/16, and I'll try it. I want it to fit snug so it's not too small that it just flips out. So we'll go down a little bit more and then we'll try it. A little bit long. You need to cut this off, and then what you can do is you can chisel out a little notch in here so you can easily pull it out, or you can make something on the scroll saw, a little deal where you can grab a hold of it, glue it on, and then be able to slide it out. But there you go, folks. That is how you make a dovetail box with a sliding lid.